Everybody, welcome to the video. It's Thursday, June 3rd. We're breaking down this 8-game main slate that we have over on DraftKings today. There's a 4-game early slate starting around 12:30 p.m. Eastern, but I will not be covering that in this video. I do have those players on my spreadsheet, but not going to be talking about them in today's videos, just focusing on tonight's main slate. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can follow me over on social media if you want in the bottom right corner of your screen. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon and get access to some extra content, link is down below for that. But I think that's it for the plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the pitchers and move on to the bats. And there's not a whole lot to like with pitchers today, and a lot of these guys are above $9,000. So we might have to save some money with the bats today. But we'll start up top with the ace of the slate, Yu Darvish, $10,700 in a really good matchup versus the Mets. Pitching at home in pitcher-friendly park in Petco. He's also the late-night hammer, so if you guys like just rostering guys that start late in the night to boost you very late, Yu Darvish is your guy here. He is very expensive, but he gets a nice matchup here versus the Mets. I realize that Pete Alonso is recently back, but this is still a pretty bad lineup. Yes, he does add a boost to the lineup, but overall, there's still a lot of guys missing, and it's not a lineup that you should be scared of, and Vegas would totally agree with a 2.82 implied team total against Yu Darvish. Pretty heavy favorite, 7.5K prop as well, and Yu Darvish has been awesome so far this year. Now, he doesn't have quite the strikeout numbers that he had last year so far, and the overall numbers aren't as good, but he's still a very, very strong pitcher. xFIP below 4, really nice 2.16 ERA, 3.3 SIERA, 30% K rate, 6% walk rate. I mean, there's really nothing to complain about too much. That fly ball rate's almost at 50%. The hard contact rate's above 30%, so maybe those are your only concerns there, but not scared here versus the Mets at home. Looking at their splits versus righties this season, they just really haven't shown much power whatsoever. I mean, I know they're not striking out a ton at 23.3% clip, but only a 124 ISO, and like I said, guys, the majority of this lineup is really rough, so Yu Darvish is an awesome play here, and I would really try my best to get him in your lineups. I think you're going to be spending up a pitcher tonight. I would really like to try to get Yu Darvish and Lance Lynn together. I realize that's a lot of money spent for pitching, like $20,000, a little bit over that. But the way this slate is, I think you might want to try to make that work. And there's some decent value plays for the bats that I think you can make it work tonight. So anyway, speaking of Lance Lynn, $9,700. He gets that matchup versus Detroit. And any single time we have a solid pitcher facing Detroit, they're always going to be on our radar just because they're one of the worst, if not the worst, offense in the entire league. 3.3 implied team total against them. Very heavy favorite, 6.5K prop. And Lance Lynn's been fine this year. I wouldn't say he's been elite by any means, but he's just a nice, fine, solid pitcher that typically can pitch deep into games. His ERA is amazing at 1.37. He is getting very lucky considering his xFIP's at nearly 4 and his SIERA is getting close to 4, but I don't think that's gonna. I don't think like the luck is gonna change here versus Detroit. Still a nice 27% K rate, not really giving up much power at all. Less than a 100 ISO given up, and we know the numbers for Detroit. They're always going to be pretty putrid. Now, they're terrible versus lefties. They're still bad versus righties. Just not quite as bad as they are versus lefties, but still 27% K rate, not really walking a ton, well below 300, WRC plus below 90. So Lance Lynn, Yu Darvish, if you can make those two work together, I would be very happy with it. I know it's very expensive, but I'm going to try my darnest to make that happen. Then some more wild card options here. We have Griffin Canning, $9,400. Like for $300 more, I can just get like a more safe play with Lance Lynn. Like I'd much rather play Lance Lynn here. But if you're looking for a tournament pivot, Griffin Canning has been solid recently. Has been getting those strikeout rate at nearly 26%. He will still walk guys, and he doesn't go as deep into games. But anytime we have a pitcher facing Seattle, I think we can always make a case for them. We saw last night with Chaminade. Didn't have a no-hitter. I don't know why I was going to say that. But he went 9 innings. I think he struck out 8, walked a couple guys, gave up a couple hits, but a very, very strong game for DFS purposes. So I'm not saying Griffin Canning is going to do quite that, but I don't think he's going to get blown up here versus Seattle. This is a team that will strike out quite a bit. They are worse versus lefties, which did favor Chaminade here, but I think Griffin Canning is still a fine option if you're looking for a tournament pivot off of Lance Lynn. But in cash games, you definitely want to get to Lance Lynn here. And then if you need a cheap SP2 tonight, Anthony DeSclafani, $7,100. He's nothing more than a average pitcher with outings that can be above average at times. Looking at his numbers this season, 3.5 ERA, nothing to complain about. 4.1 xFIP, 4.2 SIERA. The strikeout rate's not really great at only 21.6%. He will walk around 8% of the batters, which isn't great, but he doesn't give up much power in this matchup versus the Cubs. It's fine. Yes, they do have some decent bats in that lineup, but versus righties so far this season, about a 25% K rate. I know those numbers are like not terrible or anything, but if you're just looking for a cheap pitcher in a pitcher-friendly park and he shouldn't get blown up, I think he'll probably give up a run or two. But if he can get like 5 to 6 strikeouts here go 5 or 6 innings, give up a couple runs, maybe pick up the win here. He's a slight favorite. Then I don't think that's a bad day from Anthony Desclafani at $7,100. But outside Desclafani, there's really no cheap pitchers that I have much interest in. You could look at Tyler Anderson, but even then, I'm not really excited about it. So probably going to be spending up for a pitcher today. I might be open to a couple of other cheaper pitchers, like I just mentioned, but for the most part, I will try my best to get Yu Darvish and Lance Lynn in, and we'll try to find some value bats, which I guess we can talk about right now. So let's move right on over to the bats. And as you can see, I do have a few decent options here in the 2K range, a lot of guys in the 3K range, so we should be able to make that work if you happen to want to go that route. We'll start up top here with the catcher position. We have Carson Kelly, $4,000. Not loving the Diamondbacks because Brett Anderson is a very annoying pitcher to stack against because he's got such a good ground ball rate. Like, the guy's not great, but that ground ball rate kind of really sucks to roster bats against. Like at 55%, I think last year was close to 70%. But he's allowing over a 40% hard contact rate and a 272 ISO. So I think there is some upside here. He doesn't strike out anybody, and he does walk a decent amount of guys, only 5.5 Ks per 9. So he's going to give you pitches to hit. And his xFIP in Sierra, well, Sierra's closer to 5. His xFIP's closer to 4.5. But obviously not a great pitcher. It's just that ground ball rate can get a little bit annoying. But I do think some of the righties in this lineup are totally viable, and Carson Kelly has been crushing it so far this season. Overall, he's batting nearly 300 with over a 400 WOBA and a 210 ISO with a 155 WRC+. But if you're looking at his numbers specifically versus lefties, I mean, the guy has been amazing. About a 400 batting average, 321 ISO, 233 WRC+, a 7% K rate paired with a 26.8% walk rate. Like, that's an insane ratio there. So also a 50% hard contact rate just to make it even better. So Carson Kelly does great as one of the best catchers on the slate for me. If you want to save a little bit of money here, we have Omar Narvaez, $3,600. Really liking this Brewers stack. They're playing at home, which is a hitter-friendly park in Milwaukee, and they have Seth Frankoff on the mound they're facing off against, and he is going to be one of the best pitchers to pick on in this entire slate. Anytime he's on the mound on a DFS slate, I like the opposing offense because Frankoff has been bad this season. Looking at his splits overall, he's got over a 9 ERA. I know it's only a 13-inning sample size, but over a 9 ERA, 6 xFIP, 5.5 Sierra, 13% walk rate, giving up a 300 batting average, over a 230 ISO, and a 427 WOBA. So you can sign me up for pretty much all the Milwaukee Brewers here. They're not overly expensive, and for the most part, I think they are going to be very chalky today because those price tags paired with that implied team total and the pitcher that they're facing, they just make a ton of sense for me. Ryan Jeffers, $2,000. Mitch Garver underwent groin surgery, so he's going to be out for quite some time. So Ryan Jeffers here, he floated nicely last night. I believe he had a homer and a triple, so if you rostered him, you were pretty happy. He's only $2,000 facing a lefty. It's purely just a price play here for the most part. Not loving the Twins, but I think they're fine if you want to look for some of the cheaper righties here. Dropping at first base, Shohei Ohtani, $5,600. He is facing a lefty in Sheffield, so I prefer him obviously versus righties, and this price tag is insane. I'm probably just going to play one of these cheaper first basemen tonight, but he's also eligible in the outfield. But if you want to play Ohtani, the Angels currently do have a team total of 5, which is pretty high. We know Ohtani's been one of the best batters in baseball in terms of power. He is striking out quite a bit, and his batting average is at 263, which isn't terrible, but the power's been there all season long. A 333 ISO with a 153 WRC plus and no PS close to 1,000. So yes, I prefer him versus lefties, but I'm not that scared of Justin Sheffield. And then Christian Walker, $3,300. We've already mentioned it with Carson Kelly. Obviously, Walker's numbers aren't on Carson Kelly's level this year, but if you're looking for some of the righties here in the Diamondbacks lineup, I think they make sense versus Anderson, even though he is an annoying pitcher to stack against. Then Daniel Vogelbach, $2,600. He might end up being one of the higher owned players on the entire slate because if he's going to be hitting this near the top of the order here, batting in second, only $2,600. Cheap lefty power here versus Frankoff. I mean, it's going to be hard to pass him up. I realize his numbers aren't anything great, but he does have decent pop versus right-handed pitching, and you can sign me up for all the bats versus Frankoff. So I do like Daniel Vogelbach here quite a bit. Dropping out second base, we have Whit Merrifield, $5,400, facing a lefty in J.A. Happ, who's just not a very good pitcher. I know sometimes he can have some decent outings, but I'm not really a fan of J.A. Happ's talent at this point of his career, and I think the righties here on the Royals do make some sense here. And with Merrifield, always has some stolen base upside as well, so I don't mind him. And you could also throw in Salvador Perez, Carlos Santana, and pretty much all the Royals lineup here is a decent stack tonight. Colton Wong, $4,200. I'm just imagining that the Brewers are going to be very chalky tonight, so I think Colton Wong will fall under that category, and he's been solid this year, batting 283, 164 ISO. Some actually decent power from him, decent WOBA, so if you want the leadoff hitter for pretty much the best stack on the slate, if not close to it, Colton Wong, only $4,200, does make for a solid play. Then Adam Frazier, $4,000. This is pretty much just me running out of second baseman to talk about, so I threw him on here just because it's a nice lefty on righty matchup here versus Hernandez. And Frazier has actually been really good this year. I know he plays for the Pirates, so he's not going to get any respect, but and it's a large sample size too, and a 335 batting average, 3.2 WOBA. Obviously not a big power guy, but his numbers are not that bad. And given his DFS price point, I think Adam Frazier is definitely in play. Although more of a tournament pivot off of Wong, because I assume Wong's going to have a decent amount of ownership, as will Whit Merrifield. Dropping out of third base, this is not a promising position today. But Anthony Rendon, if you're just looking for a righty and lefty matchup here versus Sheffield with a team with a decently high implied team total, Rendon makes some sense here, although he has not been playing good baseball this year. Only a 110 ISO and a 228 batting average, so not overly excited about playing Rendon at close to $5,000 because I feel like I can get a guy like Travis Shaw and Hunter Dozier to do pretty much the same thing for a lot cheaper price point. And speaking of those guys, Travis Shaw here, $3,300, just a cheaper lefty with some pop versus Seth Frankoff, although he will strike out quite a bit. Then Hunter Dozier, $2,100. There's a really cheap Royals righty here versus J.A. Happ. The batting average has been terrible this year, batting 150, but he does have decent power, over a 200 ISO so far this year, and he gets lefties fine, so I don't hate Hunter Dozier for the price point. Then dropping down to shortstop, another position that's not very good. Yes, you could always play Fernando Tatis, but I'm not really trying to pick on Taijuan Walker. He's been excellent this year, so just pick some cheaper options here. Alberto Mondesi, $4,500. If you just want to stack some rows here versus J.A. Happ, I think that's fine. It's a very small sample size this year, but he is batting 360 with a near 200 WRC plus and a 360 ISO. Obviously, those numbers will come down, but got a little bit of power and some speed upside out of Mondesi, and he should be hitting in the middle of the order at a fair price point. Willie Adames, I never know how to pronounce his name, but recently went to the Brewers and $4,000, big park upgrade for him, going from the Trop to Milwaukee. So $4,000, not going to be hitting in a great spot in the order more than likely, but if you can give me any bat versus Frankoff, I won't complain too much. Batting average sucks this year, but does have an ISO close to 200, and he always has had problems hitting in the Trop, so the move to Milwaukee should be a good one for him. Then J.P. Crawford, $2,900. If he's leading off here versus Griffin Canning, I know I mentioned I do have some interest in him, but at $2,900, this is not a good position today. If he ends up leading off, I'd assume he's going to end up being pretty popular tonight. Just try to take that cheap option at his position that's not very good. So don't hate Crawford. I can't really say anything good about his numbers, but it's a nice lefty on righty matchup versus Canning. Then dropping down to the outfield, not a lot to like here. Usually we have like a nice laundry list of outfielders to talk about, but it's a pretty slim position as of right now. We'll see if some other things pop up throughout the day, but as of right now, Christian Yelich probably going to be one of the highest owned players in the entire slate because, again, people usually are able to spend up for an outfield position, and there's really nothing to like, and everyone's going to like the Brewers tonight versus Frankoff, so Christian Yelich is fine. I know the numbers suck this year for him. Only a 0.83 ISO, and he does strike out quite a bit. Batting average isn't great. The on-base percentage is fine, but I'm gonna get on Christian Yelich here. It's a hitter's park here in Milwaukee. Team total above 5. Frankoff sucks. I like Yelich a lot. I think he's pretty much a lock in cash gains as long as you have the money for him, which you should. Nelson Cruz, he would be your pivot off of Christian Yelich. He's facing a lefty, and anytime Cruz is facing a lefty, he is always going to be in play. I'm not in love with the Twins tonight, so that's why I assume most people are going to play Christian Yelich here, but I think Cruz is a fine pivot if you're looking for lower ownership. Ketel Marte, $4,100. He'll probably end up being very, very popular, just my assumption at that price point, because the guy's been awesome so far this season. And like I mentioned, Brett Anderson's kind of annoying to stack against, but he's still not that good of a pitcher. And I think Ketel Marte definitely should get the advantage here. And smaller sample size this season because he was hurt for a while, but he is batting 352, 407 WOBA, ISO above 200, 400 OBP, and just some really good numbers. And he's a switch hitter, so he's always going to have the platoon advantage, and he hits lefties just fine. So like Ketel Marte a lot, definitely a big cash game guy for me tonight. Obviously, El Garcia, $3,900. Prefer him versus lefties, but he has shown some decent power this season. I like all the Brewers, so sign me up for all these guys. Justin Upton, he's been leading off for the Angels, $3,500. Got a lefty on the mound. He's actually been okay this year. I know the batting average sucks, but in terms of power, over a 200 ISO this season, so I don't hate Justin Upton at that price point leading off. Jorge Soler, $3,100. Hits lower in the order these days, but if you're just looking for some righty power upside here versus J. Happ, Soler makes some sense, even though he hasn't really shown it this year. Batting average is terrible below 200. The ISO is below 140. WRC plus of only 59, but we know the guy's got some upside, and if you're just looking for a cheap bet, I think Soler is a pretty solid play, just given the price point. Then Kyle Garlick, $2,800. He's pretty much just a guy you can always play when he's facing a lefty, considering he gets the leadoff spot here for the Twins. His numbers versus righties are pretty bad, but versus lefties, 261 ISO, over a 300 batting average. Does strike out quite a bit and doesn't walk whatsoever, so his ratios are terrible there, but We're just looking for a dirt cheap righty versus a lefty tonight. Kyle Garlick at $2,800 is a fine play versus Chris Bubich. But with that being said, guys, I think that's going to be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. And you can follow me over on social media if you want, using the handles in the bottom right corner of your screen. And if you want to help support the channel, over on Patreon, link is down below for that. Projections, optimizer, rankings, all that good stuff. It's the beginning of the month, so it is the best time to sign up. Link is down below, but that'll be it. Hope the weather is wonderful wherever you guys are, and I'll see you in the next video.